Hi, everybody. Welcome to 2ZQ Hot Takes, where we discuss issues both big and small. I am your host, the Very Handsome Tim Kirk, and today I'll be talking about the High Line. The High Line is now a tourist destination institution. It has become as obligatory as Ground Zero or the Empire State Building or the fountains at Lincoln Center or Central Park. I see people marching, or as I refer to it, soullessly stomping along this thing as if it is the death march to Bataan, or they will somehow be rewarded with a pot of gold when they get to the end, as if that is where the rainbow ends. The High Line is actually crowded a lot of the time, meaning it is not unlike the subway during rush hour. All right. Wikipedia says the High Line is a 1.45 mile or 2.33 kilometer elevated linear park, greenway, and rail trail created on a former New York Central Railroad spur on the west side of Manhattan in New York City. Since opening in 2009, the High Line has become an icon of contemporary landscape architecture. The park is built on a disused southern viaduct section of the New York Central Railroad line known as the West Side Line. Originating in the lower west side of Manhattan, the park runs from Gansevoort Street, 3 blocks below 14th Street in the Meatpacking District, through Chelsea to the northern edge of the West Side Yard on 34th Street near the Javits Center. The West Side Line formerly extended south to a railroad terminal at Spring Street, just north of Canal Street, and north to 35th Street at the site of the Javits Center. Most of the viaduct's southern section was removed in 1960, and the section north of 34th Street was demolished and reconfigured in 1981. Another small portion from Bank to Gansevoort Streets was demolished in 1991. The line was unused and in disrepair during the 1990s, but the riveted steel elevated structure was structurally sound. Around this time, it became known to urban explorers and local residents for the tough, drought-tolerant wild grasses, shrubs, such as sumac, and rugged trees which had sprung up in the gravel along the abandoned railway. The administration of Mayor Rudy Giuliani planned to demolish the structure. Residents who have bought apartments next to the High Line have adapted to its presence in various ways, but most responses are positive. However, some say the park has become a tourist-clogged catwalk since it opened, while friends of the High Line co-founder, Robert Hammond, said that he failed the community. The High Line did not fulfill its original purpose of serving the surrounding neighborhood, which had become demographically divided around the park. The line itself has been depicted in a variety of media before and after its redevelopment. The 1979 film Manhattan includes a shot of the High Line as director and star Woody Allen speaks the first line, Chapter 1. He adored New York City. Director Zbigniew Rybczynski shot the music video for Art of Noise's single Close to the Edit on the line in 1984. In 2001, 2 years after the formation of the Friends of the High Line, photographer Joel Sternfeld documented the High Line's flora and dilapidation in his book, Walking the High Line. In 2007, chase scenes from the zombie apocalypse film I Am Legend were filmed there and in the Meatpacking District. Aside from a visit to the High Line Festival in July of 2009 and a brief jaunt on the High Line, which I captured in video in July 2011, my experience with the High Line was strictly limited to the 1980s. My recollection of the High Line was a much more thrill-packed adventure in the dark. The term urban explorer is quite flattering, somewhat amusing, and my experiences scaling and descending from the tracks were limited to the Meatpacking District below 14th Street. At the time, it was illegal to enter the fenced, off-limits area surrounding and containing the High Line. It was also dark and spooky. Adventurous, athletic companions would try to be as discreet as possible, furtive, and quick-footed to avoid the wrath of irritable meatpackers, the police, and to sidestep any puddles containing the residue of meatpacking, which left your footwear with a lasting, unpleasant odor. There was something of an adrenaline rush to plot and execute your ascent, and there were a number of ways to accomplish this goal. One was to boldly scale the meat trucks parked under the High Line, which may or may not have had alarm systems on them, and were often in view of any open doors cranky workers could monitor through. If you did chance that and climbed the truck, then got on the truck's roof, you could maneuver yourself over the rail and land on the structure quietly. However, there wasn't usually enough time for two to make it up there without attracting unwanted attention. I generally went with the fence climb. It was more exciting to be with someone who was in good shape and could hurl themselves over a tall, barbed cyclone fence without cutting themselves, tearing their clothing, or falling. land like they were on Mission Impossible, then lift themselves up to the first landing, the steps leading up to the landing having already been cut off and removed by the city. So by the time you made it up to the tracks, you felt a wave of excitement, your blood was pumping, and that high made your rendezvous all the more enjoyably stimulating. Almost every time I was up there, sometime during the proceedings, someone down the tracks would light a match, and you would suddenly be made aware of just how many other urban explorers were up there examining how nature reclaimed the territory and enjoying each other's company. Sometimes I would see an entire group standing around a single lit match. At other times, I would see silhouettes of many others in varying distances, posted like sentry duos and trios along a watchtower. A few years later, when the film Ghost came out, I was reminded of all the shadowy figures I had previously seen and how similar they appeared in my memory, except that mine were far from nasty. Maybe they were. Getting down from the highline was a bit easier because we could all see any possible obstacle to our departure. I and my fellow urban explorers would often climb over the tracks and down onto the roof of one of several nearby trucks, then slide down the windshield and the cab onto the street very quickly and run as fast as we could after setting off the alarms. We would usually find our way to a nearby dimly lit cobblestone street and make our sweet goodbyes. In conclusion, I had a lot of fun up there. More than I would imagine almost all of the tourists dutifully marching up and down the park's length seem to be having these days. I don't know what my younger counterparts are doing to approximate those thrills, but I sure hope it ain't chemical-based. See you next time. Thanks for listening, and as the kiddies say, peace out.